All right, welcome back to the Treadmill project. So here's the next step, which is our ink pass. Now this should go considerably faster than the last part of the project because we've already done all the hard work. That's what the rough animation is for. And thankfully, unlike other animations, a basic walk cycle is pretty predictable in its timing. So we have a little less to worry about there. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to File, Save As. We're going to rename this your name mod 4 treadmill underscore ink underscore v1. Okay, we're going to really section off these projects to make it super simple to figure out which is the most recent version in case there is any sort of crash. Save. And again, that should be saving to your Treadmill Tradigital folder. So go ahead and pause the video and save your file out properly. Alright, so your file should be saved properly. So now what we're going to do is we're going to make a new layer and we're going to name this Ink Pass. Alright, now unlike before, just like we did the rough animation, all of these ink passes are going to stay on one layer. Okay? And we do kind of still want to do them in the same general vein of contacts first, then passing, then downs, then ups, just to make sure things are going in between, and then we can do a straight ahead shot on those in betweens. Okay, so what we're going to use here is whatever you want your color to be outlined with. If you want to do Disney style, right, you might have multiple outline colors. If you want to do something that's more akin to, say, TV animation, it might only be black outlines, but maybe the outlines on the outside of the edges, the outside of the character are strongest and any interior lines are thinner. Whatever you want to do, make that decision now because that will tell you how you're going to outline your character for this ink pass. Okay, so one thing that's going to be really important to do, I'm just going to use black, but I'm going to use a certain line quality. One thing that's really, really important, just like when we did the rough animation, is to make sure pressure sensitivity and tilt is on. If you recall, when you press lightly down on your tablet, you're going to get a thin line. Maybe it even breaks apart like that, which creates a cool effect. If you press harder, it'll be thicker. If you press light, then hard, then light again, you're going to get a really cool tapering. Now, I have my smoothing basically set to none, so I can get the most shape possible. So one thing you can do is, let's say after you make a line, and you like the line, but it's a little wobbly, just, oops, wrong tool. Select it, and then, hit smooth a few times. And that might smooth it out, and then you can make adjustments as necessary to get it to the line that you want. We don't want wobbly line work, and that can be really hard to avoid in Adobe Animate just because of the way it receives feedback from the stylus. So making use of these smooth and straighten tools will be a huge asset going forward. So of course I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to ink my contacts first. So go ahead and just watch for right now. Notice how much I zoom in though. You're going to want to zoom in pretty significantly on every part you do ink work on. We don't want to be zoomed out because then we're going to get extra wobbly lines, and that line is going to be really hard to control. The more you're able to use your shoulder to draw, which you can't do with something small, the better the result you will have. Okay, so one thing to look out for as you're doing line work is to realize what's overlapping and what's not. That'll be really important. Like for here, these ears are actually overlapping the front of the head, okay? And here, I want this outline along the top of the head to be a little bit thicker. So I'm just going to go over it another time to widen it. I'm not too worried about how it's coming out in terms of wobbliness yet, because again, we have smooth. Smooth is our friend. I just want to make sure any gaps in the middle are filled in. because that will absolutely affect how smooth functions. Now I can select this line and I can press smooth a few times to get something that's a little nicer. And now I can go through and I can clean it up and make adjustments as needed. Okay, so I'm not jumping to just outlining everything all at once. I want to make sure my line work is what I want from it as I go along. Now, one thing I'm going to do here for the head. Sometimes I have a really kind of odd bean shape here for the head, so I'm going to select mine and press Command C to copy it. And this will save me a little bit of grief on the rest of the drawings if I can make sure that this head is basically the same size on all my key poses. That'll help me when I go through an in-between to make sure I'm not getting this wobbliness. If you recall from the rough animation, I was having a lot of trouble getting this head consistent. So that can be something I can do to help with that. Okay, now these interior lines are going to be smaller for this particular style I'm using. So I'm going to go ahead and select. I can even use the lasso tool here to only select those lines. Whoops, lock rough animation, and go to my selection tool so I can smooth them. Bada bing, bada boom, they look beautiful. Okay, I can do the same here for the eye, going back to the brush tool. Okay, here I have a little bit of overhang. I'm just going to go in with the eraser and get rid of it. Let's go ahead and smooth this eye a little bit, get it closer to what I want. And fill. So you can see, even though I've been working on this for quite a few minutes now, it's been about 7 minutes, I'm only on the head, and that's okay. Again, we have a whole week for this ink pass for a reason. And with it being your part of your homework, you really have a lot of extra time to work on it, to get it to look really nice and swanky and smooth. So don't sweat about it taking time, because we have time and we want to spend that time. We don't want to worry about jumping ahead to the next section of the project, because if our line work is not very good, good color's not going to mask poor line work. So I'm going to use my hand tool, which is H on the keyboard, to come up. I'm going to move here to the top of the ears and here. I'm going to fix the shape a little bit. Come back to my lasso tool. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to outline the edges of these a little thicker, like the head. I'll wait for auto recovery to save. And I'll come back in. But I won't go any further with the thick lines because I want all interior lines to be thin. I only want the exterior ones to be thick. For this particular style that I've chosen, your style might be different, but you still should be using all that smooth stuff to really clean up your line work. I'm going to go back to the lasso tool. Let's go ahead and select all these ear lines. Okay, go to our selection tool, hit smooth not too many times. Sometimes straighten does a better job. You'll have to experiment between the two to get the results that you want. Looking good. Okay, now I'm ready to move on to the next buddy part. And again, it's been almost 10 minutes and I'm only on the head. That's okay, because we have all this time. outline the torso here. Get that working up front. I'm not going to outline where there's overlap yet. Just clean up those lines a little bit. Okay, now I can go ahead and start on these arms. I'm going to make an executive decision not to draw all the way around, only draw where that overlap starts and kind of stops. And one thing I just want to make sure is that my arms aren't suddenly getting thicker lines than the rest of the body. So sometimes you might have to zoom out and just double check that that's looking all good. And maybe what I'll do on the hands here is I'll add just 2 little lines for fingers. Okay, now I can go do that for the other arm. Now again, the reason I'm just not outlining everything first and then hitting smooth is that I'm not sure with this particular drawing if animate is going to give me the results that I want. So I'm trying to keep it periodically smoothing it in sections for that reason. Now the other thing I'm noticing here is his hand is getting a lot bigger than the other hand. So I'm just going to try and, oops, Command Z, adjust to get them a little bit more similar. Okay, and time to move down to the rest of the body. And again, same thing as before, I'm not going to draw this entire top arch. I'm only going to draw into where that side starts and ends. Now, instead of drawing a second outline, the other thing I can technically do, so let me smooth this real fast. Too much smooth. Yeah. So you can see already it's not quite wanting to smooth the way I want it to, so this isn't going to work. I am going to have to outline it heavier. Uh-oh. So what happened right there where I got all those boxes was object drawing mode was accidentally turned on. If you get a bunch of boxes surrounding your stuff, just press Command B to break it apart, and then it should treat everything as just a normal fill. So make sure object drawing mode stays off. See, now when I fill it, it actually, or press smooth, it behaves a little bit more normally. So this is why earlier I was saying we have to really maintain and be aware of where overlap is happening. Otherwise we might outline the wrong lines. Other thing you can do is instead of drawing over twice, if you want a thicker line, just use a thicker brush. It does mean it's harder to control smaller lines when you do want them, so get comfortable with those bracket keys because that's how you, that's how you shortcut through the brush sizes. Right bracket makes them bigger, left bracket makes them smaller. Alright, but the good news is contact 1 is done. So instead of having to redraw it, I did need to add in these little lines right here and right here. Okay, so instead of having to redraw it, for the second contact 2, we're just going to copy frames, paste frames. And this will help us with in-betweening the line work as well, because we can turn on onion skin and really help to home what's what. Okay, so let's go ahead and go to contact 2, F6 delete. I'm going to do the same thing all over again. So this is pretty straightforward. It's the same thing over and over again, just checking your line width, checking how it goes. This video is already 20 minutes long and all I did was the first contact 1. It would take me quite a long time, longer than I have to make these videos, to actually go through all the different contact poses. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop the recording for today, because that method that I just showed you, you're going to do on the second contact pose. Once you're done with the second contact pose, you'll do it on passing 1 and then passing 2. And then once you're done with that, you'll do it on down 1, then down 2, then up 1, then up 2. Then you'll go from frame 2 to frame 3. You'll go straight ahead on all the contact poses, or on the in-betweens. You'll just go straight ahead only on those in-betweens, not on the key poses. Get those key poses down first, because you might find, let's say right here, that you need onion skin on to figure out exactly where those lines are going to go. And you need those key poses there as reference, inked, ready to go before you can do that straight ahead on the in-betweens, if that makes sense. Okay, so with that, go ahead and give it a shot. If you have any questions about the inking process, again, just remember it's the same process that we did for contact 1, and then you'll do the same on contact 2, then the same on passing 1, passing 2, down 1, down 2, up 1, and up 2. It'll be the exact same process. Then you'll do the same process but straight ahead on the in-betweens. Okay, on all those keyframes that don't belong to either of our notes. Okay? So go ahead, give this video another watch if you feel you need the clarification or want to see the techniques again. Again, make sure you're using the brush tool, the normal brush tool, and make sure pressure sensitivity and tilt are on, and that you're selecting either with the lasso tool, best way to do it, or with the selection tool, and you're smoothing as you go to get nicer line quality. All right, happy drawing, and I can't wait to see what you create.